I can tell you on COVID or coronavirus or whatever you want to call it, plenty of names, tremendous progress is being made. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any.
We've also gotten better on testing, so that explains a little bit. But with these increases, Bill, we're seeing increases in hospitalization, and that's a real concern.
The president is absolutely disinclined to shut down the economy, as is the vice president.
I agree with Mr. Kudlow and the White House that we don't want to shut down again. The question isn't, do we want to shut down? The question is, can we get a control of the virus?
That is the question, and here we go again, focusing on COVID because their cases are increasing. Obviously, there's more testing nationwide, but as you look at the numbers here, the U.S., 2.1 million cases, but 116,000 deaths. Globally, you're at 7.9, almost 8 million cases, 434,000 deaths. The president, meantime, looking at the disparity in coverage and tweeting out the far-left fake news media, which had no COVID problem with the rioters and looters destroying Democrat-run cities, is trying to COVID shame us on our big rallies, won't work. And they are moving forward with that rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Let's bring in our panel. Fox News senior political analyst Britt Hume, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and Chris Stirewalt, politics editor here at Fox News. Britt, we are seeing an increase of cases. We always point out that there is more testing. The president pointed that out too. But the experts are concerned about a resurgence of COVID.
What I'd say about that, Brett, is that some experts are concerned, and we're seeing increases in some places, and others the decline continues. The larger question, as was touched on by in those couple of the sound bites, is what we do about the cases that are turning up now. Some as a result, of course, of cases being discovered by testing, some obviously new infections, is whether we're going to go back to lockdown in some places. I don't think there's any appetite for it politically, and unless we knew more about who was being infected and how seriously and whether they're going to recover, you can't really make a case for resuming lockdowns in places where they've been eased. I just don't think that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Brett, and this is back to you, the University of Washington, and they have adjusted their predictions and expectations. They're now projecting 201,000 deaths by October, and that's an increase of 18%. But we've tracked this throughout here.
Well, but Brett, the University of Washington model has been off time and time and time again. It is something of a modern miracle that all of us seem to pay so much attention to that model. It's just a computer projection. Those things are often off, and these have been wildly off. So what they say now, I don't think counts for anything.
Mara, what about what the president talks about, the disparity in coverage? Not really a big problem with all the protests or the health experts weighing in, but yet when it comes to the Trump rally in Oklahoma, it's night and day.
Well, health experts will say that going out in a big crowd is a bad idea, whether you're protesting or you're going to a Trump rally. But Trump is going ahead with this rally. He clearly has taken some precautions. I think people are going to be tested for temperature. They have to sign a waiver that if they get sick after they go to it, they get COVID, they're not going to sue the Trump campaign. So this is a tricky problem. Look, what Britt said is right. If you test a lot of people, the numbers are going to go up, and the president kind of doesn't like that. On the other hand, if you test a lot of people, then you can tell people who have symptoms to stay home, and the other ones are fine going to work, and you have a better handle on the problem in general.
Is the president, Chris, right to point out the disparity in coverage? NBC had these two tweets within an hour about, one was a protest where it just noted how many people were there, and the other one was a tweet about the dire warnings about the Trump rally to come within 1 hour of each other. We're focused on, obviously, the facts on where the coronavirus is, but clearly there is a different level of coverage.
Well, he can complain about that, or he can complain about the weather, or he can complain about anything else he can't change. It's not like NBC News tomorrow is going to wake up and say, man, this Donald Trump is on the ball. We really like this guy. The question comes as we look at Saturday's rally. can they execute it in a way that is reassuring and competent? Competency is what matters here. They're going to hand out masks. Will people wear the masks? There's no public health official anywhere in the world who would say that jamming 18,000 people inside one enclosed space is a good idea under this. So they're already taking a chance. Can they execute it in a way that looks competent, reasonable, and responsible, as would befit somebody seeking a second term in office?
You know, Brett, one thing.
You know, Brett, where
the
do you see
president
this
could do-
race right now? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say the smartest thing the president could do would be to move his rally outside. That would immunize it seems to me, from criticism, since when all the protesters are outside in huge numbers, and a lot of the same people that complained about the coronavirus fell silent. So as far as for the race, Biden's ahead. He's been ahead. He's likely to remain ahead for a while. That doesn't mean that when it gets down to it, he'll win. But in my view, he's certainly ahead. How big a margin? There have been a couple of polls that made it double digit. I think we'll wait to see if those are duplicated in the next round of polling to decide whether we believe that or not.
Yeah, no, as we've said, we're still a long way out. I want to turn topics here, and this is the president on John Bolton's upcoming book. Mara, I want to get you to react to what he said today.
He was advised very strongly not to write it until it's cleared, and he couldn't wait. And we'll see what happens. But I think he's got, personally, I would imagine he has, when you do classified, that to me is a very strong criminal problem. And he knows he's got classified information. Any conversation with me is classified. Then it becomes even worse if he lies about the conversation, which I understand he might have in some cases. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, you know,
obviously the White House seems like it's still going to fight this.
Yep, it's good. They're going to fight this. Bolton's lawyer is adamant that there's no classified information in it, that he followed all the procedures, that he presented the book for review at the National Security Council, I think starting in December. And there's going to be a big fight about this, but they're determined to go forward. What's interesting is there have been a lot of books written by former Trump officials, none of them as high-ranking as John Bolton, and none of them, as we understand it, to be as potentially negative.
Right, Chris, but he did not testify during the impeachment proceedings or anywhere around there, and now it's book time.
Well, maybe Bolton will get really lucky and they'll try to put him in jail and he can sell 1 million more books as the great martyr of this stuff. You know, when you have a tell-all, when you have one of these kiss and tell numbers that come out, they want maximum controversy. I have no idea what's in Bolton's book, but the White House and the president are sure doing a good job helping him sell copies right now.